I didn't have a lot of necessary raw talent, but what I had was a lot of desire. You start out as a creator and no one's ever taught you how to run a business or manage people.
Yeah.
And what you do is you consistently fuck up for years until you get good at it. You can't just create a great brand. It has to be a great business.
Yeah.
And it has to be great people. Why are we doing it? Who are we doing it for? What is the benefit to them? How do I feel about it when I'm making it? I think the really great creators reapply their experience and skill in different ways as culture changes. And the thing I always worry about is going, oh, we've got good.
Yeah, yeah.
And then, like, as soon as you start doing that, you're fucked. Everyone's got a script, haven't they? Of the great novel, and they're sat in a coffee shop thinking whatever. But I think you just got to do the thing you want to do. So it's just a rallying cry, really, to say, let's just go do that thing.
Yeah, great. Welcome to Plymouth.
I'm very glad to be here.
Oh, it's lovely to have you. It really is.
It's lovely that you've got me.
Well, it's even lovelier that, you've taken the time to come all the way down.
You're very welcome.
The first questions we're going to kind of ask you are based around inspiration. So...
I just use the internet.
Yeah, all right. Next question.
I'm only going to say yes or no, right?
So I guess... Who or what inspired you at the beginning of your design journey? We've spoke about, the few people you went to college with, or, but, kind of before that, what got you into that?
Yeah, so I always felt I was creatively led, visual, I suppose. I always like music, I like reading, but visual was the thing for me. So I used to draw comic books and self-publish them with friends when I was younger, like an early teen. I used to work in a bookshop where I sold comics as like a side gig to make money when I was young. I used to do painting, things like that. And I came from quite a bohemian house, so I didn't go to school. So we were home educated, and that meant I was pretty feral. Wow. So I could just make stuff. And there's a couple of influences, one of which was the house had a lot of vinyl in it, records. And of course, in those days, it's 12-inch. Yeah. And those record covers were all incredible, they're beautiful. Really different images, because it's stuff from the 60s all the way through to this point. This was in the early 80s. So you've got like everything from like ABC to Santana, really different stuff. But then, of course, when you start to look at New Order record covers, things like that, you suddenly realise, wow, someone's designed it. And on the back, there was a credit for it often. And I just thought, that seems like a cool thing to do, to actually be able to make things like this. And then I went to night school to do my what were called O-levels at the time. I did an arts course, and I really liked illustration art. And I tried lots of things, I did printmaking, photography, illustration. And at the time, I really liked people like Rauschenberg, who were kind of collage-based, very spontaneous work. I was into kind of expressionism, things like that, Rothko. But in terms of design, the people I liked most as I started thinking about applied design professionally was 8VO, Vaughan Oliver, and we were talking earlier, Wolfgang Wangart. So I liked the Swiss school, but I liked when he got fucked up. And Vaughan's work was particularly amazing because he was so idiosyncratic and different. It just wasn't like business design and graphic design. It was just something really pure and amazing. And then I love the idea of engineered typography that AVO did. And the quality and the pain to get that work, I thought was really admirable. And I know it was hard work for him because obviously I spoke to the chaps many times since about it. Yeah. And it, a lot of our work ended up in the bin before it, they chose to do it. And I liked that dedication to craft in all instances of that. And the dedication to work that is personal to you and doesn't follow necessarily what people say a particular career path or particular style of work should be. And what's nice is everyone can have different influences. You were talking about Carson, someone else might like Sagmeister, someone else likes Cartledge Levine or North, and that's great. That's one of the great things about design and creativity, particularly in an applied sense, is there's a lot of range. So that's kind of, in a sense, what got me in the game. Yeah, wow. And I went to Provincial Art College.
It's interesting you're interested in drawing as well, and that's something that you kind of quite often. We've actually had a few interns in here that are really like good at drawing.
I was not very good.
You weren't?
No, I was
no.
The
Honest.
no, I wasn't very good. I wasn't.
But if you're interested, it doesn't matter what your skill level is. It's just like an interest in drawing, and I think that translates then into sort of actually being the competent.
I guess my point. I guess my point. What I was going to say is that I find that the kids or students that can draw are looking, and they're really good at. They can be really good at type, and those skills are transferable. And they're.
I mean, craft and art direction, having an eye, I think, is definitely applicable. If somebody's really good at typography and has a kind of really high tolerance for balance, things like that, if they take a photograph, often that applies. But the feeling of the photograph will be very different to their kind of professional work. But the thing with me is, I was by far. Not the least talented, but I didn't have a lot of necessary raw talent. But what I had was a lot of desire. So in a sense, I just learned by doing, and I did a lot of things and just kept doing it. So I did the things I wanted, and it improved in increments. So rather than being birthed brilliantly, I'm sure, some of the people you speak to on these podcasts will have been birthed perfectly as creators, have awesome talent. I manufactured my talent. So I practiced to become good rather than just spontaneously doing it. I did have obviously some talent, to a certain degree. But things like drawing, I had a friend when we were doing comic books. He was just so much better than me. He would sit down and draw things that I've never seen before. Truly staggering. And I'd be there with a pencil doing this, rubbing it out, doing the ink, getting the rotary pen out. It'd take me hours to make one thing. But I would get great pleasure out of the actual process. And that's what I like about design and creativity is I like the making.
The process.
The anticipation's cool, the result is cool, but the actual making bit, the process is a bit I like.
I think you'd be surprised, actually, because some of the people that we've had on this podcast before, Morag Myerskov, Marina Willer, for example, I think they also say the same thing, that they weren't birthed as perfect creatives. No matter what their persona is now and how they're viewed now, actually, they worked hard. They worked really hard to craft that persona, that knowledge, that expertise.
Well, it comes with, we were talking about this earlier, the truth will out. If you can see everybody's work, and the people who consistently apply the same mindset, the same effort and rigor to their work, even in the ups and downs of their career, you look back after a period of time and you win what you win based on the effort and time put in.
Yeah, right.
So, Marina Willer is incredibly talented, but is also a very diligent and very smart person who's applied their work consistently to the industry and culture at large. And that takes a lot of effort. I'm a 3-decade overnight success.
Yeah, right.
It's years and years of practice to get good.
I think that's a really kind of important thing for people to understand, that it's a journey. Yeah, and you're never the finished article. It's just and you're because you're always learning.
Well, don't you find that I don't know how you feel, but I'm always interested about what's next versus what I did 20 years ago.
Totally, I'm all that.
It's more fun, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I think it's hardwired into creatives, is this desire to make things, try things. And whatever stage of your career, you can still feel that. Obviously, you have more experience and you're a bit calcified as you get older and you pick up scar tissue and you're cynical and all that stuff. But inside is still a person who was fell in love with creativity originally. And I try and find that person as regular as possible.
So 3 decades later, if your inspiration came from just the sort of desire to want to express yourself through comic books and drawing and then other influences as you got older, do you still look around and look for inspiration now? Do you look at other people's work and see what inspires?
Not other people's work. Everyone can see
even in broader practice.
I mean, obviously, culturally, I look at art and listen to music. I read a lot. So that's the thing that I do. That I think fulfills me most creatively over the last decades, really, is I like to read about big ideas. So I read a lot about physics, psychology, human behavior, things like that. And I find it kind of cleanses my mind and it makes me think about the drivers of what we do. So a lot of our work is for very, very large audiences, tens and hundreds of millions of people. billions sometimes. So like the work we do for Premier League, the audience is 3 billion people worldwide.
Right.
And you can't meet them all. So it's really hard. So what I tried to do is open my mind up. So I learn about how people work, how people think, and the things that are common to us all. And then also celebrate the differences that make us interesting as people. So reading is really helpful for that. It just opens my mind to be more creative. And then when I look at work, I tend to look at what drives our work and then the output of our work and the team. So I look at the team for kind of influence and reference and stuff. I try not to look at, obviously I know what everyone else is doing. I have to keep an eye. I do judging and things. So you see work internationally. But I try not to be influenced by that. The difficulty is we can all see everything at once. And it's so easy to fall into the trap, even subconsciously, of doing the same things as everybody. So we're working on a project at the moment called Super Futures, which is a kind of almost remixing how we look at creativity, how we use things like AI, how we talk to people, how we look at how we serve audiences, what the future of industries are, and almost trying to break how we work and retool it for the next version of ourselves, because it's so easy to settle into a kind of perceived rhythm. And the thing I always worry about is going, oh, got good.
Yeah.
And then like as soon as you start doing that, you're fucked.
Yeah. I think that leads on to the next question, which is this kind of idea of fear, and what scares you, and I guess apart from me, and him.
Well, he's not even talking. I'm so terrified of it.
You said I wasn't that scary earlier on. You were like,
no, you're far from me. You're very.
But part so maybe part of what you were just saying.
Yeah, very, very what? Very, very. Before you go on to that, though, I was trying to squeeze in a little question. You were talking about, like, when we were talking about inspiration. You brought up you were doing the comic with a friend who was better than you.
Yes,
I'm quite interested in this idea of maybe not unhealthy competitivism, but like a healthy competitivism. I always had like that friend that he would draw and he was always better than me, and I'd think, oh my God, I've got to step it up. And do you think that's like kind of relevant now? Working, looking to other people, certainly when you were younger, for students, getting together
when I was young, I was hyper competitive, and inside there was a profoundly competitive person, and that's in my regular life as well as my professional life. I'm inherently competitive, but I have this thing that I compete against myself versus somebody else. So I'm competing against where I am and what I'd like to improve on my terms. So that's how I see myself now, because I'm obviously maturer. But I've been very lucky that I've worked with people who are exceptional, like really great creators, and that a lot of my friends are very, very skilled at the discipline we all do. But I've had a business partner, Aporva. I've worked with him for 29 years, I think it is now. So nearly 3 decades. And I've worked with him for 23 years with DixonBaxi. He's a better designer than I am. He might say the other way around. You'll have to interview him and see if he'll reciprocate. But he's an exceptional creator. So we've always had a nice, healthy competition that we still have today, which is if I do something, he'll do something. If he does something, I'll do something. Yeah. And I like that because it's like a buddy system.
Yeah.
And what actually happens is when I'm down, he picks me up. But when he's down, I pick him up. So what it does is it creates this kind of symbiotic energy that there's a constant.
Nice.
I really enjoy that. I think Josh and I call that, like, we say that's like almost like a jamming session. So I might kind of start something creative, and then he might have a look, and then it's just this back and forward, and it's a real buzz. That moment, that's the best part of the process. That kind of,
I like to make, we like to make things that surprise each other as well. Yeah. So like I'll make something knowing that he'll go, oh, okay. And then he'll make something and I'll go, oh, okay, let's do that. Healthy competition. In terms of our place in the industry, there's enough space for everyone, so we don't want to compete against anybody else. Yes. So I just think I admire other agencies, but we tend to just focus on what we love and what we believe in, the principles that drive that work. And then we're kind of competing against the next version of us, really, it's like exercise. That's how I see it.
Yeah, I guess that was a question for we've got a lot of students that are going to be there tonight. Yeah. And I guess I think it's really important to kind of come in and be with other people and see what other students were at that level, so you can really bounce off each other and grow and kind of challenge one another. As I said, not in a unhealthy competitive way, but like I really think for me, certainly it has always driven me forward.
I think some people are more hardwired to that than others. I think there's a danger with a lot of people who enter the industry is that they want everything to happen too quickly.
Yeah.
And there's a perception of what should happen. You should have a certain title, you should work a certain way. People develop at different paces. You know, I'm very lucky. I've hired and worked with thousands of people in my career. And some people are slow burns. And
100%.
some people, boom, they land, they burn hard, and then for some reason they just fizzle out. Other people, they're squiggly or whatever the phrase is. So people develop at different paces. And also the environment, the context changes as well. Some people thrived in COVID, some didn't. And vice versa. So what you have to do is kind of aggregate an environment, I think, where it maximizes the potential of as many different types of ways of working as possible, knowing that you're doing it in a shared way, because we have 50 people. So obviously you can't serve every master for every person. But as a team, you can at least give room for everyone to feel like they're growing at different, they're growing well relative to themselves. But I think healthy competition and kind of being inspired by other people, whether it's within your studio or elsewhere, I think is really healthy. You know, you should go out and say, well, fuck, that looks fucking great. You know, North just brought a book out. And it's really interesting because each page is like a detail of their work. It's a really brave thing to do because they're not showing the full case study, but you know what that is. When you see the curve of the C of Co-op or the chevron of RAC, you know how much work went into that whole body of work. And it's really inspiring. We don't work like North, but I deeply admire 30 years of however craft, you know. And I think that's really good because I would never go, right, now I've got to make something like North, but I would definitely feel better that day. I had a buzz that day when I got that book. I was like, shit, this is cool. You know. So I think that's really healthy.
It's interesting that you still get that feeling, like when you see some good design.
When I saw your shelf, when I saw the book, I was like, okay, that's interesting. And you can't help it. It's like second nature, I think.
That wasn't for the design. That was more because it was a Chelsea book, right?
I was hoping to review it.
I don't support Chelsea, just for the record. Obviously,
no, but like when I look across there, your eye dances over and you go, that's cool, that's cool. And you're picking it up all the time. Or we were talking about brickwork outside. You're picking those things up. And at some point when you go to apply your work, all those things will be pulled out. I would never sit down and go, I'm going to do that typography. But I might, at the back of my mind, be thinking, well, maybe I'll use a serif. I won't even know where that came from.
I think Jim Sutherland, he was talking about like just being a magpie all the time, like constantly feeding his brain with stimulus from a wall to a piece of type to a book to a table to a chair to a new city or whatever it might be. You know, all of those things kind of like influence how your brain behaves and what it thinks about and how it then outputs a creative thought, right?
Exactly. And for me, most of it is subconscious. I don't deliberately do anything. I try and deliberately be a good person and look after people and whatever. But I just live my life, and all that aggregated experience turns into whatever I create. And for me, I'm creating a space for other people to create as well. So I'm working on some kind of personal work and professional work with DixonBaxi within the DixonBaxi remit. But obviously, I run and create the space in the studio for other people to create. So I get a lot of my thrills and stuff vicariously through seeing work I wouldn't have made myself. And so when I was in the studio yesterday, I kind of walked past the screens like, oh, wow, that looks really nice. And like, wow, okay. And I would never design it that way. And I shouldn't do, because the person designing it is half my age, is from a different country, and is applying their skill set and experience in a way I wouldn't do.
But to match...
But still gives me buzz.
But to match your experience with someone, for example, that's really young, that's got that effortless kind of instinct for the now, which, like, you lose, like, you don't, it's harder to... They've just got that instinct. I think it's absolutely fascinating that you're kind of, putting those together. And that's why a team works, right? You've got all those different people, they do things in different ways,
I don't know about the now thing. There's an interesting thing because that's speaking to age and experience. And I think the really great creators reapply their experience and skill in different ways as culture changes. So you can remain relevant and interesting, though you don't have the same kind of definition you do when you're very young as a creator, because everything's really specific and there's a real charge to not having done something before. If you've done 50 record covers, it obviously feels very different to when you've only done one. But I do think there's something, the people who are, some of the people you talked about who are, it's part of their being and they're really hardwired to be highly receptive and take a lot of inputs in and then process them into something original. It doesn't matter what stage of career they're at, it comes out really amazing. Mike's a really good example of that. You know, he's consistently a brilliant designer and his work has kind of changed and adapted over the years, but whatever engine he uses, it always creates something interesting.
Yeah.
And I'm sure anybody who's in a studio is 25 is learning a lot about however that engine works.
I love that. Have you seen that poster he's done recently with all the different iconic British logos, all sort of like superimposed? Just I don't know, kind of just reminds me of so many things awesome. And eras and times.
So you come across as a really confident, you know your stuff kind of guy. Is there maybe somewhere in there? Is there any fear? Is there any fear? Yeah. Have you? No. There's not.
What is it to be afraid of?
No, I don't know. Some people are. They have maybe a.
Well, I fear, like in COVID, I worried about the business, for example, and certainly worried about the team. But that's different to fear. I'm not hardwired to be afraid of things. I developed my career by just going out and trying things and taking whatever I had and parlayed that into something more as I developed. Everybody at some point in their career, however experienced you have self-doubt, imposter syndrome. You see, part of the human condition. You'd be bullshitting to say anything else. But I'm hardwired to be an optimistic person. Yeah. So I don't even like the phrasing of questions which are loaded to be about those topics. There's a lot of that in our industry, and I think the thing that drives me is control. If you can control how you work in your destiny, then it's in your hands. So it's less terrifying than if you don't have control. So I'm in a really fantastic and very lucky position because I run an agency and I have an entity. It's like a shield that protects me. The fragile, soft bit of me has this thing around me that can protect me, and it allows me to make decisions that I can take risks and push the envelope on things I want to because I've built that engine to be very, very strong. So that's why I'm confident. Yeah. And also, as you get to my age, you naturally just think, well, I only worry about what I need to worry about. I don't worry about what. Anyway, I'd like people to think that I'm a nice guy and stuff, but I don't worry about all that pressure you do when you're 22. You know, your identity matures and you become very self-confident, I think.
Do you think that's an age thing? So for the younger students who do suffer from, anxieties and all sorts of stuff, especially particularly in nowadays, do you think that's something that they, it's like, listen, you'll grow out of that just naturally as well as...
You don't grow out of it, you grow to understand how to control it.
Yeah.
Because you don't ever lose doubt. Like, on the train here, I sit there on the train thinking, I hope I do a good job tonight. I hope I answer the questions well and it's helpful and interesting for people. I'm not afraid of it, but I want to do a good job. When we make work, the thing that drives me is not doing shit work.
Yeah.
I'm terrified of doing crap. And, we bounce off some skeletons in our closet work-wise. I won't tell you what they are, but I'm sure we've...
Draw of shame.
Yeah, we've probably done some clunkers. But, no, I like to have an optimistic view of the world that I'd rather try something and fail than not try it.
Yeah.
And I'd rather just say, it's going to be okay. Of course, after 3 and a bit decades of work, I've got a lot of skills and tools and techniques to cope with things. So if you throw me in a room, I'm pretty relaxed because I know how it goes.
Do you think your Super Futures project that you mentioned earlier is in part to sort of combat any idea that fear might creep in? You might from say a business point of view, we're resting on our laurels, or we're getting complacent, or we're in our groove and we need to get out.
Yeah.
Is that the reason why you instigate stuff like that?
It used to be, but actually what it is I think the world is changing very rapidly, and I think in order for us to find what our place is, there's a series of profound things that are going to change our industry. One of which is AI.
Sure.
The other is how the industry works. It's radically changed in the last 5 to 10 years. How people are served by applied design, so the systems we create are very large-scale systems. Just how social media works, how a kind of more Western-centric view of things works. The fact that everyone focuses on the West rather than the whole world, it's not particularly healthy. So there's a lot of bigger drivers that I think about. That how do we make work that is relevant and interesting going forward, rather than just like tools and techniques and systems. And some of it is just not atrophying, because you need to challenge yourself to do something new. I think we're pretty good at what we do. And I know the team who are at the kind of, junior, mid, senior design director level, they're all hard charging. They're all trying to do new and different work. So I'm not too worried about that, because they're really amazing people. But I am kind of, I've got an eye on how do we find our place in the industry in the next 4 or 5 years. And maybe I don't need to worry, but I tend to think in 3-year cycles.
And maybe not just in the industry, maybe sort of looking broader to a more global environment. And you talked about an identity and a branding system for the Premier League, which is one of the most iconic sports brands in the world, and has to appeal to so many different audiences.
We did the television system, which is basically everyone outside of the UK. So here it's Sky, but everywhere else in the world. So I was in China, and I saw it. I was in a bar, and it came on television, and it was our design system, but in Chinese,
right,
with Chinese presenters, and pundits. And I've seen it in, all over the world.
Did it work?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
I mean, how do I know? I don't speak Chinese.
No,
read Chinese.
but that's the point, isn't it?
We had thought about it. On a basic level, in some countries it's left to right, right to left.
Yeah.
In Germany, it's a third longer. So there's some really practical things, but it's actually about how football works. Because fandom around the world is very similar. People love their football, they love their club, the banter about who does what. And if you go to China, they're just the same, or South America. So what you're looking at is what's the narrative of the sport, what's happening in that moment. Where are you in the game? Are you at the beginning, which is it's a context and anticipation. In the game, it's about the moments that'll make a difference. Then it's post-game analysis. Then it's a context of what the next match does to that. And the design system is having to shift and change with that. So that's what we think about. And if you get that right, it gets out of the way when the foot is really happening, and it shows you something when it's necessary. And it has a swagger and a feel that suits the game, of course, and suits the audience. So it just serves them in that sense. And, the systems we make, whatever they are, that's what we think about is what we're designing for the audience, and how will they experience it, when will they experience it. Often it's in the real world, a lot of the time it's digital, sometimes it's tiny because it's on a mobile, sometimes it's live, sometimes it's catch-up. Often they interact and control the actual process, so you can't just make something and hope it works, because they will break it. So you have to work a system. I could build a fixed system that's flexibility into it. So that's what we think about.
That's always the beauty of any new project, is that immersing yourself in that world, learning about it, doing a really deep dive into all the different facets of it, and absorbing that. Yeah. And probably like you two, I've learned to do that actually really quickly.
Yeah, it's be very natural.
Yeah, and it's a sort of, within week, 2-3 weeks, you've got quite a deep understanding. You don't know every nuance, but
that's one of the superpowers of experience. Is it becomes second nature. It's like any great skill, isn't it? It's like seeing a great footballer or a great artist or musician. Once they've got it, it's hard to lose it. You need to keep practicing, but the seamless quality of that means you can create very quickly and share knowledge quickly and stuff. It's really powerful. So as you lose the kind of singular focus of youth when you're creating, and that real super kind of drive of the first version of what you are as a creator, you start to gain that. And it's quite a nice balance, I think.
You touched on it earlier on when you were talking about sort of technology as maybe sort of something that will potentially influence the industry. Do you think that there are other things that designers, like students that might be there tonight, who have just come, might be graduating this summer, who be thinking forward and be thinking about what their career might be? Do you think there are things that there are some big challenges that they're going to be facing? Because they're probably being taught in probably quite a traditional way, I would imagine, still, albeit cognizant of technology and whatever. But there's change coming, right?
Definitely, there's going to be a wave of intelligent applied technology that's going to profoundly change everything in our lives, and it will profoundly change how we create. And I think the way I see it is the key to it is if you took a pyramid, at the top at the bottom of the pyramid is all crap, the commoditized stuff, the system stuff, all the stuff you don't want to do. And then there's like average work, and then there's good work, and then there's a great work, and then there's a truly excellent work. And as you go up, it's, software technologies, bits and bobs. Then you get into a bit more kind of systems, grids, thinking, rigor. Then you get up into the more powerful things of human idiosyncrasy, insight, heart, the things that are really human. And AI and those applied technologies are going to eat the bottom.
Right.
But if you stay towards the top and you have a perspective on things and you prompt the technology the right way, you use the technology in a way that is making something for you rather than just a copycat of something else, you start to be part of it. And it's, the phrase is, you're not going to lose your job to AI, you're going to lose your job to someone using AI. That's what's going to happen. So there's other things, though, the fact that you can make fake narratives, news, and political agendas with those technologies. Those types of things are things that need to be fought. But in terms of relevance, I think anytime there's a technology shift, it's about retooling what type of work you like to do with that technology and tool. And that's how we're trying to view it.
And the design and technology's done that for years, all the way through.
Yeah, exactly. It's just going to be a much bigger wave, this one. Much, much bigger. But that means it's really exciting. There's huge potential. I know a lot of people are very nervous about it. And, if I was entering the industry now, it's very different to when I entered it. But I think the great thinkers, the great creators, the ones who are original, the ones who are self-determined and understand their value in the world and the work they'd like to make, it's about carving your version of what you want to do in the industry, I think. I think it's a lot of pressure on younger designers and students. There's a lot of very negative and heavy narratives in our industry. And I think it feels very heavy, and it doesn't need to be.
Oh, I wonder if the education establishment is preparing these guys for this wave, because it is a big wave, in the right way. I get a sense that people are perhaps being taught in perhaps a traditional manner, and that actually that there needs to be a very big step change, because, like, coming back to your point about the pyramid, that bit at the top, well, the currency there is ideas, right?
And origination.
Originality and so on, and is enough of that being taught?
Yeah, and it might be styled, Yeah, I mean, I think what'll happen is it'll be a little bit rough. And it always is. As when we went from analog to digital, everyone thought, that's it, and there's going to be no more books. Everything's going to be digital. Look how beautiful they all are. Lots of people will lose their jobs. And of course, some people did. If you were artworking on a traditional artboard, you don't do that anymore. If you're using, marker pens to do illustrations, you wouldn't do. You change the software and the technology to change that. It's just going to happen again in a more accelerated way. One of the issues is you can get to something that looks completely finished instantly, and that's a really tricky thing to deal with, because it's about the finish and the polish versus why it exists. So I think getting back to why things exist, the value of them and how they serve people, again, in our version of applied design, I think is a thing to ask. Because if it's just about making a piece of art for your wall, fine, all bets are off, it's easy. Just, so when Damien Hirst or Jeff Koons is making something, that's manufactured art. It's not the same way that Rothko applied paint, but it has just as much value if you believe in that art. And, so if you make something that is digital with, say, AI, many people will like it, many people won't. But the person who's making it is still bringing themselves to that creation if they're using the tool well. So I think that's the things to teach is why are we doing it? Who are we doing it for? What is the benefit to them? How do I feel about it when I'm making it? Does it make me feel alive and creative? Do I enjoy doing it? Is it going to be useful for people? They're the questions.
Yeah.
And, is it something that's new and fresh and different and original? None of us are truly that. We're all a remix of the same cultural shit. We're all, we're all influenced by everything. But kind of pushing out and trying to do something new and interesting, I think, is really what it's about.
Yeah, I think you see quite a lot of these charts maybe on like social media said, right, AI is coming, the first jobs to go are these, and always at the top is graphic design. But I think you're right. It's really interesting what you said about that pyramid. And I think, I think perhaps say the people that are designing, for example, they're a social media kind of designer that can churn stuff out quickly and they might make it in, that's that could be done quickly. My wife did that the other day and she's got no training and it, like you said, looks really polished and I just can't see that will have the value that it perhaps did, before this. So I do think if you're just relying on technology to create that, I think there might be an issue. However, graphic designers are, like you said, at the top end of that pyramid, or applied graphic designers, thinkers, I think, they've got lots of different skills. It's not just if you took, say you took a rose by Peter Saville on an album cover, and you took one by Nick Knight on an album cover, then you took a rose that someone made with AI, would you know the difference? I think at some point you would start to see the artist in the work, I hope. But of course, if it's just about it being highly polished, then that's fine. The one thing that I think is interesting is it's going to democratize things. So somebody anywhere in the world from any background will be able to make things. And one of the problems we have at the moment, we keep talking about university and college. Most people don't have access to that. So that's the biggest barrier to our industry is that is people's backgrounds and their social standing. If you can't afford to go to university and if you can't afford to go through that system, the same people end up doing the jobs. And that no one ever talks about that. Everyone's hardwired to that system. Yeah. So we try and bring people into our agency who haven't been educated that way. I was going to say,
from different backgrounds.
Yeah, my next question would be like, do you need to go to university anymore?
Yeah, I mean, it has huge value. I mean, one of the things about university is you meet life friends and you learn how to be a human that kind of works at a higher level. Lots of people have degrees in things they don't use, but they've learned life skills that are really profoundly useful and have met life friends and had experiences. No, you don't have to. We mentioned David Carson. I don't know if he went to university. I don't think he did.
A lot of my peers, slightly older than me, they, none of them went to uni.
I mean, education is hyper important. I mean, I don't think we want to be circumnavigating education, but at the same time, we have a very kind of UK Western perspective of things. But I speak to people all over the world in lots of different countries, and technology is giving people access to our industry that in India and Africa and lots of parts of the world in Asia that wouldn't have done otherwise. And I think that's a really healthy thing.
I think we've had some work experience people in, and so they haven't been, their undergrads haven't been, and they can't afford to go to university. They're not going to go. There's so much talent there. I think maybe in some kind of an apprenticeship or something like that. I think that might be.
But you can also create a creator. This idea you have to have talent to start and go to university doesn't make sense. Loads of people I know, we've had hundreds of people for our studios who on paper don't have the same talent as somebody who's been to one of the named universities. All that's happened is those people have been polished faster than those other people because they went through a brilliant system. If you go to the RCA, you're going to come out really well, aren't you?
Yeah.
But the entry to that is fucking hard. And it's very elitist. it sharpens the edges of things. So, and not in a bad way. I mean, I think it's a good thing. You want high standards. It's really powerful. But then there's lots of people who might enter the workplace in different ways, are hyper talented, and they blossom in a different way and become exceptional creators. So we've got people in our team who don't have the same formal educational backgrounds, but just as talented now. They've had chance to work professionally and learn. We still, obviously, we have to mentor and teach them skills and stuff. And but like sponges, like plants, if you just put a little water in the blossom. So I think talent is a dangerous term at the point of people getting into the industry.
Yeah.
You do have to have standards, of course.
Do you look in different places for that talent?
Yeah, all over the world.
Yeah.
More than half of our team's from a different country. So we help people come in for, like, one of the barriers to entry, for example, since Brexit is visas.
Sure.
So we have to sponsor and pay for that now. So it's about salary, but then also if we didn't help people with sponsorship for visas, they wouldn't be able to afford to come. That's the barrier. And what it's about is just lots of different mindsets and cultures and ideas and ways of thinking. And I'm really keen on that, because I think you can help people, even if you don't think anyone's very good. There's a number of times I've met somebody who just becomes an amazing creator. And again, often it's very focused on graphic design. In our studio, we have strategists, writers, producers, operations team, editors, motion people. So it's not just pure graphic designers. You can create in lots of different ways. And our industry is very broad and deep. But often we only talk about a certain type of person. It's a very narrow view of what our industry is. So I'm very keen to look at creativity across lots of ways of looking at that. And we've had people who come in who were like studio assistants who went into, say, like a junior growth role, and then went into strategy and now a strategist.
Yeah.
We've had people who come in who have a film background and now they're producers, but they're producing commercial work as opposed to film production. So sometimes there's a close relationship, and other times people have to learn the opportunities of our industry. And it's really broad. It's not just graphic design. It's not just a certain type of graphic design.
I think at the university, to just, I don't want to say that that's not the way forward to go to university, because there's lots of students there.
It's really amazing.
Yeah, but I do think like what university does give you on the others is obviously the friends and all of that, and it polishes you a lot quicker. I think you're able to explore. And whereas I think if you were to come into a design studio, you're very much working how we work, and there's less time to kind of do that, expanding and that time you've got to kind of explore. And
that's a fixed period of time. So it's great that you do that early on, but you need to be able to do that through your whole career. So that's why we've been super futures for the same reason. You need to have periods where you just kind of go loose and you get tight. University is really profoundly important.
Yeah.
And it's different in different places in the world as well. So we see it through a kind of UK-centric lens in some senses, but we also see it through an international lens because of the range of people we have in the company. And it is amazing because it finds talent, but we also use other initiatives, other groups. We have an internship, intern academy, and it pays a real London wage plus 10%. And a third of our team came through that.
Wow.
And a lot of those people came from backgrounds that wouldn't be able to move to London, for example, unless they had a paid gig. And of course, you should pay for internships.
Yeah.
It didn't used to be the case in the industry. But wherever possible, it's about removing barriers to talent to be able to express themselves at lots of different stages of their career.
It's interesting because one of the things we're going to announce tonight, which is on the back of the generosity that you showed in buying a slug of tickets for us for the event tonight.
Thank you, by the way.
You can edit that.
Well, that we've distributed them out to the colleges and students and stuff, right? And one of the things that James and I have decided to do is PDF has never been about making money. For us, it's a love project, and there's no intention for it to it needs to sustain itself, but it doesn't need to make money. So what we're going to do this coming summer is we're going to choose from the college and from the university the best student. We're going to get a little panel together, and we're going to choose the best student from each one, and then we're going to give them a paid each one of those students a paid 2-week internship in a studio in Plymouth.
Cool.
Yeah.
That's going to be paid,
So-
great. Well,
we
proper
couldn't do that
minimum
without
wage. We're going to announce that tonight.
Yeah, but the whole point of this is none of this would happen if it wasn't people like you who put the effort in outside of what is a really tricky day. You've got work to do, you've got families to look after, and then you spend huge amounts of time. And you did that all the way through COVID as well, to create something that is really amazing. And I meet people all over the industry that are doing that, and people don't realise how hard it is to run these things. It's really, really, really tough. And you're giving voice to people, you're helping educate the industry. And it's what we were talking about earlier as well. It's like a shared knowledge thing, isn't it? You get to meet people you wouldn't meet otherwise.
100%.
But that's what I love about doing this.
And we'll encourage people to come up and talk to you in the bar afterwards, to not just see you as
There's always that thing of like, they stay there for a bit and then you can't go over and stuff.
But interestingly, all the events, you'll be mobbed, I think. Actually.
Different countries have different rhythms to that.
Right.
Like some countries, everyone just piles in. In other countries, they're like, it's really funny.
I think what's interesting, certainly for the students, I know we were talking about earlier, when I lived in London, you have this open access to, I could go and see any speakers. It was easy. And then I moved to Plymouth, and it's just not there. People don't want to travel that far. They don't want to, but we've got like 2 universities, and I think it's important. So when I first was teaching at the art college, I remember the lecturer holding up a book and saying, this designer here, well, have you looked at this person? And I just thought, God, like, let's get them down. Let's kind of like, and I think he reacts so much differently. We've seen Anthony Barrow, and he's a person, he's a guy that he's really affable and likable. I think people react to the person as much as the work. It's like, great, because you can't connect to it, right? You're just seeing amazing
the work
work.
is abstract.
But how do I get there?
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. It demystifies it.
Yeah.
Exactly that. It demystifies it, which is the work itself is abstract and it feels unattainable or distant. But of course, once you meet the creator, you realise they're just like you.
Yeah, I can do that.
Yeah, they're just flawed and as stupid and goofy and idiosyncratic.
But that's helpful to those people because they suddenly realise.
They just have maybe a bit more experience and stuff. But I don't speak in London anymore, in fact. Most of my talks are either international or even Belfast, Glasgow, Birmingham here. I'd rather go somewhere that I'd meet interesting people, because I do speak in London, but I've done that it's so easy in London for people to get access. So I'd much rather come somewhere to meet a fresh, different community. Not that I don't like London either, by the way. I absolutely love it. And I've worked there, since 1994. But I think it's the least we can all do is, if you make the effort to make something consistently, we should make the effort to come and support you. That's what the kind of compact or handshake should be, I think.
Thank you.
Yeah,
by far. Yeah, we really appreciate
it's hard work. It's really, no one appreciates how tricky it is to make these things, and how gracious people are. I mean, since I've been here, you guys have been awesome. And when I went to Belfast recently, everyone was so amazing, like so gracious and open and helpful. And that's what I like about our industry, the good part of it.
Yeah, 100%.
Not that it's a bad part of it either.
It's all right.
We talked a little bit about work and things like that. You talked about the Inter Milan project and things like that. So, what's been the most? Let's say other than that, because we've already done that.
Well,
other than that, what's been your most rewarding project that you've been involved in?
I'm going to sound really trite now, but it's there's two things. One is the team, and the other is the entity DixonBaxi.
So try.
Yeah. But at my stage of career, I've been super fortunate to work on some very, very, very interesting projects. And I love them all fondly in different ways. And you look back at them, and obviously not all projects are perfect, but I've got a few that I think I'm very proud of. Obviously, AC Milan is one of them. But I've always seen it as a body of work because it's a moving, living, breathing thing. It's constantly changing. So when I walk around the studio and I see work by somebody who has just entered the industry or someone who's transitioning from senior designer to DD and they're managing people and it's the first project they've done, or this person's, it's the first project they've ever done. So we've got a guy called Prashant who was an intern who's just joined us, and his first project's just gone live.
Brilliant.
And it's fucking great.
Yeah.
And he's part of a team doing it. But we've also had a job go live where a couple of people were promoted, and it's their first larger job where they've run it, and it's amazing. And we do shout-outs. We did it last night. We have this thing called Champagne Wednesday where we just chat about stuff. And we're doing shout-outs. And I was like, this is basic my project, is the thing now, rather than a particular piece of work. And if the entity gets the opportunity to make something and everyone's on it, hopefully we'll make something good.
It's really nice to hear that, because Marina Willer talked about that as well, didn't she? She was really open. It's not just me, it's my team. And I think I can't remember the member of staff that she spoke about, but she really talked to them almost as part of the family and was really proud of the work that she was doing.
I mean, I would say I would never profess for our team to be family, because I think that'd be disrespectful of me to think like that. But I care deeply about them. But I'm just a flag bearer for my name's on the door, so obviously I get the benefit of that. But like I say, I create the space for other people to create now. And I obviously have a hand in all that. But it's a shared entity. It's 50 people making it. And it's not just the designers. Because what happens is every time we talk about it, it's always the designers we talk about. Yeah. So Hayden, our producer, or Josh, our producer, or Sarah, our studio manager, or Pompey, her assistant, or Karen, who does our numbers, they're just as important to the company.
100%.
And not that it's creative accounting, but, those things matter because the environment that you create, Eva, who heads up our writing, or Marcella, who heads up the strategy, or Alice and Toby, who work on the strategy, they're just as important to the work as, Karun or Libby or whoever is a kind of designer. They're all really important to it. So it's like it's a blend of different skills.
It'd be great.
The type of work we do isn't one designer making a thing. It's a team of lots of different skills.
And it'd be great for you to go there tonight and talk about that, because there's so many different people, aren't there, from the different pockets of the industry, whether it's, like you just said, strategists, illustrators, copywriters, like all sorts of different people. So I think it's, people find that really interesting.
I think the idea of like being most proud about building a team is such a incredible point, because it's so hard to build a good team. I probably like all of us, we've all seen dysfunctional corporate teams. Yeah. I'm not saying design businesses are necessarily really corporate, but it's a corporate entity. And
no one teaches you to run a business.
No.
So what happens is most people who start agencies are creators. Sometimes they come through sales or production, but you start out as a creator, and no one's ever taught you how to run a business or manage people.
Yeah.
And what you do is you consistently fuck up for years until you get good at it. Yeah. And I've probably made some absolutely fucking terrible mistakes in my career, managing people. Business decisions, just ways of looking at the world.
Yeah.
And it's pretty humbling, to be fair. But you just don't know that when you go into it, because you're like, I just want to make that fucking record cover. It's like, let's do that. And it's like, I want it to be really good. And then it's like, well, how do we get paid? Like, well, how does that work? We have to do an invoice. How's that work? Oh, we need bank account. But then it gets to when there's 50 people, it's the complexities of how you look after people, their mental well-being, their professional well-being, their learning and development. We're just retooling how we do performance reviews at the moment, because we did a survey recently to check on our blind spots for that very reason. So we're retooling how we do things based on feedback, because you get
internal feedback or external, or both.
No, internal. I'm going to give a fuck when I want to think sounds. No, I'm joking, but no, it's just speaking to the team, because they. You speak to the team, but it's very hard for them to be honest. Yeah. Sometimes. So an anonymous survey is really helpful to hear what they need. So he's making us just look at our angle of attack on certain things. Yeah. And so he's in a sense, the first half of this year is re-systemizing that to better serve them, basically. Yeah. And again, it's really humbling, because shit, how do we not think of that?
Yeah.
And that's, and I've been doing it a long time.
The second part of the question, which is sort of, what's your best bit of work, and you've talked about that. No, but it's kind of links to it. Is there somebody externally that you look at and you go, oh, they're doing some really good stuff? And it might be how they run their company. I'm not just talking about a piece of work. It could be a piece of work, or,
you mentioned
or a way in which
North,
yeah.
Like they could,
It's really tricky. Who do I like?
You don't see under the hood of many businesses, do you? Really? So it's hard to judge.
I meet a lot of people, so I've met most people who run most agencies,
Yeah.
and had a beer with them or coffee or whatever. And you get to know people. You can tell as well to a certain extent because you just hear, and people pass through studios and stuff.
Of course, yeah.
Who do I like? I mean, I like a lot of the people who do good for our industry. So, companies like It's Nice That, YCN, so Alex and Nick, those types of people who they're kind of for everybody. They're kind of democratizing access to learning or knowledge for the industry, helping people get into the industry. I find those people endlessly fascinating because they're doing it altruistically. They obviously run businesses, don't get me wrong. Yeah. When I think about agencies, who do I like at the moment? I mean, if you're just saying like design, I really like Accept and Proceed. But then if you think about ethos, I really like them as well because they're, culturally, it's, their worldview is really good. But then, I like how Ragged Edge carry themselves. Yeah. I met Max recently and a really humble and interesting guy. And I like people who care about people.
We saw them at Talk in Bristol probably a couple of years ago now, a few years ago.
But in terms of actual design, I don't really look at other people's design like that. I just look at where the industry is going and what's needed and how things are applied, and then just think about what's really important to us. We all kind of know who the good outputs are, and we don't compete, I suppose, directly, but we come across a lot of US agencies as well as British ones. And so I could touch your knee there.
That's all right. It's fine.
Sorry,
we're friends now.
Yeah,
it's early on now.
It's going. But we get to meet agencies who are in South America and Asia and Australia and places like that. So we get to see lots of different types of agencies because we're a bit like a cork. We bob around in the industry because we do a lot of different types of things, and we do it in lots of different parts of the world. So, there's loads of truly amazing agencies in Barcelona and Madrid and Stockholm and Helsinki and Scandinavia. And great German agencies and great American agencies, and the West Coast agencies are different to the New York agencies. So I like that. I like looking at not necessarily the ones we all talk about, but the ones that are a bit further out.
Yeah, I'd like to perhaps get a bit more.
Scandinavians are right on top of it. Well, the Dutch are pretty good as well.
Yeah.
But all of that Northern European design is great, and we spent a lot of time in Spain last year. Did quite a few talks. We've done quite a few talks for Off, which is run by Hector and Pep. Do you know that?
No.
Yeah, I know Off. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's in Barcelona, but we did Tel Aviv and Seville. We've done Barcelona and I think Paris with them a few times. But they're really interesting because they get together creative entities from all over the world. People who do like really wild titles in 3D to people like us that do kind of systemized branding design, to kind of individuals, to collectives, and from all over the world. So whenever you do a talk there, it's just like this really interesting grab bag of like super creative people. So I like going to those things because, again, I stumble across someone's work that I didn't know. We did one in Villanova, which is about 30 miles from, 30 minutes from Barcelona last year. And we met a bunch of people I had never heard of as an agencies. There were Spanish agencies, and they were just great, really great work.
I guess as we draw this perhaps to a close, I think this has been a great chat. We asked the previous speaker to set a question for the forthcoming speaker.
Oh, this is the landmine question.
Yeah, and you'll get to do that.
Will I?
For Alex.
The next speaker.
Who's the next speaker?
Alex from Dutch Scott. Do you know Dutch
Scott?
I
like those guys, yeah.
Do some great... She's coming in... So you get the chance to ask her a question,
nice.
which is a nice,
a tough one.
But
will she have a cup of tea with me? Will be the question.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sure she will.
No.
Yeah.
After this podcast, lucky at going. So
no, you touch up their knees.
But so Morag got to ask a question of you, and I think she took a look on the website. She saw the positioning that you put front and center, which is this idea of brave brands that you create at DixonBaxi. I guess it's sort of her question was sort of, when did you become brave?
That's a loaded question.
But I think there's a subtext to that, which is sort of what is bravery.
We help create brave brands, so we don't create them; we help create them, because it's a deep collaboration with a client. You can't just create a great brand; it has to be a great business, and it has to be great people. So we seek people who are ambitious. The actual reason for it is there's a couple of reasons. One is in order to succeed and as a brand, if you're thinking about it in application of the work, is culture, society, technology outruns companies constantly. So there's a greater risk of inaction. If you don't change enough, you'll get outrun. So it's like Blockbuster versus Netflix. Fuck it. No one's going to be watching stuff at home. We'll keep our shops. Business, that's a simplistic one, but it's an example. But it's also this challenge. It's like a rallying cry, which is not settling.
Yeah.
So I'm just hardwired to take a risk that I think is worthwhile to do something I want to do. And I've done that ever since I started my career. So I started my first agency at college where everyone said, you shouldn't do that. You should go work somewhere else and learn. I make work that I just think is the way I want to make it. I moved to London when I was 24, New York when I was 26, San Francisco when I was 28. Far too young and stupid to be running studios at that age or level. But I just thought I wanted to do it. I moved into applied technologies and concept cars, and I made a feature film. And it would be very easy. Everyone's got a script, haven't they, of the great novel, and they're sat in a coffee shop thinking whatever. But I think you just got to do the thing you want to do. So it's just a rallying cry, really, to say, let's just go do that thing. And if we fuck up, we'll just dust ourselves off and carry on. But if it applies to branding, there's a risk to inaction. So I'd rather go further with the work and make a bigger difference and find collaborators in our clients and the companies that will go that distance with us. So when we worked with AC Milan, we wanted to make AC Milan not a football brand. We wanted to make a cultural brand because that's what the club and the fans deserve. And they wanted the same thing. So it made the work more interesting.
Brilliant.
That's the answer.
I love that.
It's a great answer.
Yeah, it's a great answer.
And I think on that bombshell, thank you so much. It's been
My
an absolute
pleasure.
pleasure. I really enjoyed that. It was great.
Yeah, thank you very much. So we're going to do the second take now.
Yeah. Let's say it.
Oh, did you press record?
Oh,